If you're pouring your heart into your podcast, but still struggling to turn those listeners into paying clients, I've got something just for you. Imagine having a clear, simple plan to turn your listeners into buyers without relying on a huge audience or spending hours on social media. That's exactly what we'll create together in a podcast profit plan discovery call. During this free 20-minute call, I'll help you discover more opportunities for profit in your podcast and give you the next best step to turn your show into a client attracting machine. If I've got an offer that will help you expedite this process, then we can also discuss working together. Book your free podcast profit plan discovery call now by going to podcastingformoms.co/profit plan or by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to chat with you. Okay, real talk. I was on a coaching call last week and a mom podcaster said to me, I've been podcasting for 2 years and I feel like I'm shouting into the void. 2 years, consistent content, real effort, and real time stolen from nap windows and late nights after the kids went to bed. And she couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. So I asked her to walk me through her last 5 episodes, the topics, the titles, the calls to action. And within about 5 minutes, I could see exactly what was wrong. It wasn't the audio quality, it wasn't her voice, it wasn't even the content. It was the strategy, or really the lack of one. And here's the thing. If I inherited her podcast tomorrow, if I just stepped in and took the wheel, I know exactly what I would fix first. So that's what today's episode is all about because I'm willing to bet at least one of those things is true for your show too. Let's get into it. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, and welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the podcast for mom entrepreneurs who are using their podcast as their number one marketing tool. I'm Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist and producer, and I'm here to help you stop treating your podcast like a hobby and start treating it like the business asset that it actually is. Let's get into the episode. Okay, so today we are talking about what I would fix if I inherited your podcast tomorrow. So now I want to be clear about something before we dive in. This is not a your podcast is broken type episode. This is a your podcast has more potential than you're currently unlocking type episode. And there's a difference because here's what I see all the time. Incredibly talented mom entrepreneurs who are putting out genuinely good content, but the strategy underneath it is holding the whole thing back. And the frustrating part here is it's fixable. All of it is fixable. So I'm going to walk you through the 3 things that to fix first in order of priority. And then I'm going to tell you what to stop doing. And at the end, I'm going to give you a quick action step so that you can actually do something with this information that you're about to get. So does that sound good? All right, let's go. Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would fix your episode titles first. So if I inherited your podcast tomorrow, the very first thing I'm doing is opening up your episode library and reading every single title. And I would be looking for one thing. Are these titles searchable or are they just clever? Because here's a trap that so many podcasters fall into. They write titles that sound good to them, titles that feel on brand, titles that have a vibe, but they forget to ask the most important question. And that is anyone actually searching for this? So here's a real life example. Let's say you recorded an episode about how you manage your mornings with 3 kids under 5 while also running a business. Honestly, that is genuinely valuable content. But if you title it something like Mornings with Magic, no one's going to find that episode. No one's typing Mornings with Magic into Apple Podcast or Spotify or even Google. But something like Morning Routine for Mom Entrepreneurs or How to Have a Productive Morning with Young Kids, those are both searchable. Those are the titles that bring new listeners to your show. And I want you to know your title is not just a label, it is a discoverability tool. And when you treat it like one, your back catalog becomes an asset instead of a content graveyard. So here's what I do on day 1. I would go back and retitle your most valuable episodes with keyword-rich titles. You don't have to re-record anything, just update the title in your podcast host and on your website. That's it, and it has an immediate impact. So the rule I follow here is if someone who has never heard of you search for the topic of this episode, would your current title show up in the results? If the answer is no, then that means your title needs work. Then the second thing I do is I would fix your calls to action or your CTAs. So if the titles are what get people in the door, the call to action is what gets them to actually do something once they're there. And this is where I see one of the biggest missed opportunities in almost every podcast that I audit. So here's what most podcasters do with their calls to action. They either have no call to action at all, which is a problem, or they have a vague CTA like follow me on Instagram or leave a review of the podcast, which is also a problem. And then here's the third thing, which is the call to action that has absolutely no connection to the episode's content. So say someone records an episode talking about email list building, and then at the end, they ask people to go check out their lead magnet all about morning routines. That is just a bridge no one is going to cross. So your call to action needs to do three things. The first thing it needs to do is it needs to feel like a natural next step from the content of that specific episode. The second thing it needs to do is it needs to be one single ask, not three, just one. And the third thing it needs to do is it needs to actually connect to one of your offers. Because here's the thing about your podcast that I need you to hear. Every single episode is a trust building tool. Your listener shows up, they spend 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes with you, and then they walk away feeling like you actually get them. That is the warmest possible lead. And then you send them nowhere. That's the equivalent of having an incredible first date and then after that date, never talking to them again. So here's what I'd do on day one if I inherited your podcast. I'd map out every episode to an offer, not in a spammy way, but in a logical way. This episode teaches X, so the call to action is Y offer that helps them do more of X. That is the listener to buyer bridge in action. The content creates the bridge, whereas the call to action walks them across it. And yes, you can use the same call to action across multiple episodes if your offer is evergreen. So for example, I have a podcast audit, and that is a call to action I often do. And it works across a huge range of my episodes because it's the natural next step for someone who just learned something about their show and they want to apply it. The point here is stop leaving your listeners without the next step. Give them somewhere to go that actually serves them and serves your business. And then we have the third thing I would do is I would fix your episode strategy. So this, in my opinion, is the big one. This is the one that makes everything else actually work. So if I inherited your podcast tomorrow, after I fix the titles and the calls to action, I would sit down and look at the overall strategy of your content. Specifically, I'd be asking, do all of your episodes have jobs? Because here's the truth. Random good content is not a strategy, and publishing consistently is also not a strategy. And neither is being helpful every week. It's not a strategy by itself. A strategy is when every episode has a specific job inside of your business. Some episodes are meant to build authority. Some are meant to warm up a cold audience, whereas others are meant to move someone from I love listening to your podcast all the way to I need to buy this offer. And when you don't have a strategy, you end up with a podcast that is full of great content that is somehow not moving the needle. Because content without direction is just content. So what I would fix here is this. I'd look at your offer suite and then I'd reverse engineer a content plan that supports those offers. I'd ask, what does someone need to believe before they're ready to buy this offer? And then I would create episodes that build those beliefs one by one. This is what separates a podcast that is growing a business from a podcast that is just filling a content calendar. Now you might be listening to this and thinking, Jenny, I don't even know how to start doing that. And that is exactly what the Podcast to Profit Accelerator is designed to help you with. It's my coaching program where we build the whole strategy together, not just the content. But I'll share more about that in a second. The point is, your episodes all need jobs, not just topics, but jobs. Okay, so before I give you your action step, I want to call out the thing that I see mom podcasters doing that is actively working against them. So I want you to stop recording episodes based on what you feel like talking about this week. I know that's a little spicy, but I mean it. Because when you record based on inspiration instead of strategy, then you end up with a great but disconnected episode library. You have an episode about mindset, an episode about meal planning, an episode about email lists, and an episode about why podcasting is your favorite marketing channel. And none of them are really talking to each other. And none of them are pulling your listener in a certain direction. Inspiration is great for fueling how you show up inside an episode, but the topics that you choose, those need to come from your strategy, not your mood board. Plan your content around your offers. Then let your personality and your inspiration show up in how you deliver it. In my opinion, that is the shift that changes everything. Okay, so let's bring it all home. If I inherited your podcast tomorrow, here's what I would fix in order. The first thing is your titles. I would make sure that they're keyword rich and searchable, not just clever and on brand. The second thing I would do is fix your calls to action or your CTAs. I'd make sure that every episode has one clear and relevant ask that connects your listener to an offer that actually helps them. And the third thing I would fix is your episode strategy. So I'd make sure your content has a job inside of your business, not just a topic on the calendar. And I'd stop recording based on vibes and start recording based on strategy. Because when those three things are working together, your podcast stops being a content output and starts being a business engine. That's the goal, and that's what we're working towards building here. Now, if you listen to this episode and you're thinking, I don't even know where my podcast stands right now, that is exactly what a podcast audit is for. I'll go into your show, take a look at your titles, your calls to action, and your overall strategy, and I'll tell you what's working, what isn't, and what I'd fix first. You'll walk away with a clear, prioritized action plan that's specific to your show and your business. You can book yours by going to podcastingformoms.co/audit. Once again, that is podcastingformoms.co/audit. The link is also in the show notes for you. And if you've been podcasting for a while and you're ready to stop guessing and actually build the strategy underneath your show, then come check out the Podcast to Profit Accelerator. We go deep on all of this together in my one-on-one coaching program. That link is also in the show notes for you. All right, that is a wrap on today's episode. If this episode was helpful, please share it with a fellow mom podcaster who needs to hear it. And I will see you in next week's episode. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.